Corey woke up sprawled out on a metal floor. She was drooling while unconscious and wiped her mouth when she came to. Her eyes were burning, and it took a few moments for them to stop tearing and clear up. Corey looked around for some guidance as the room she was in was mostly dark. The only light she could see was a flickering one off in the distance. She pushed herself up. Her arms and legs were shaking. Whatever this snake magic was, it did a number on her body and senses. Corey walked toward the flickering light, one arm in front of her, the other on her forehead. As she neared the light, her hand hit a see-through wall, and the light in the room was turned on. The moment the lights came on, she could see the reflection of a man wearing an all-white mask, carrying two large hooks in his hands. As the reflection drew near, her reflexes took over, and she ducked a swing of the first hook. It hit the see-through wall but didn't break it. Corey rolled to the other side of the room to put distance between them. She reached for her gun, but it was gone. The next swing of the hook just missed Corey as she rolled. She caught a glimpse of a small vent under the see-through wall and waited for the next swing of the hook before dashing toward it. Corey was skinny enough to fit through, but her assailant was not. It would at least buy her time. She slid, feet first, into the vent and emerged on the opposite side of the see-through wall. The lights in this room were on, even though Corey could only see the flickering light from the other side. There was a desk facing the wall, and the chair was pushed out to show that someone left in a hurry. Whoever was watching her left as she ran for the vent. Before she could investigate further, the man with the hooks began banging on the see-through wall. First three hits of the hooks did nothing, but the fourth one began to crack the wall. Corey rushed for the closest exit. The door she found closest to her led to a long hallway. Every other door in this hallway had a light shining, so Corey used the lights to guide her. She rushed through as quickly as she could, but she heard a noise in another vent above her. Corey picked up her pace and ran faster, but the movement above her grew quicker as well. Suddenly, the vent above her exploded, and the phantom hung upside down in front of her. She couldn't react fast enough, and one of his hooks caught Corey in the left shoulder. Luckily for her, due to her smaller frame, the second swing of the hook missed her other shoulder. The swing into her shoulder had so much momentum it temporarily lifted Corey off the ground. Before the phantom brought her forward again, sorry. The swing into her shoulder had so much momentum it temporarily lifted Corey off the ground before the phantom brought her forward again. Once Corey's feet were planted back on the ground, she tugged on the arm connected to the hook at her shoulder and pulled the phantom out of the vent. He crashed to the ground awkwardly. Corey took a deep breath and screamed as she pulled the hook out of her shoulder. She put her right hand over the wound and could feel the blood gushing out over her fingers. The phantom crawled away from her on the ground, and she was once again surrounded by darkness. She ran in the opposite direction where the phantom crawled and picked one of the rooms to enter. This particular room she chose was full of pipes and devices she had never seen before. She took off the jacket of her suit and tied the arms to two different pipes as low to the ground as she could. Removing the jacket caused more pain in her shoulder, but this was the best plan she could think of. She hid and waited behind one of the devices in the room. She could hear the phantom walking slowly through the hallway, dragging the hooks as he walked. "Come out, detective." The voice was garbled from the mask, so it was hard to hear him from where Corey was sitting. "I want to add you to my collection." "In here," Corey yelled. She stood up from her hiding spot right as the phantom reached the doorway. They stared at each other for a moment before the phantom moved. Phantom didn't see the suit jacket tied to the pipes because of the darkness and the fact that Corey only wore black suits. As the phantom crashed to the ground yet again, Corey stepped on his back and jumped over him. She held onto one of the pipes to help her over, but the pipe broke off and sent Corey tumbling to the ground as well. The phantom got to his feet first, but Corey swung the piece of pipe she had in her hand as hard as she could and connected with the side of the phantom's head. The hit didn't put the phantom back on the ground, but instead smashed him into the wall. This made it easier for him to recover than Corey could, so he swung one of his hooks before she could get up. She dodged this swing by sliding on the floor and got back to her feet before the next swing came. Corey ran ahead again and reached a door at the end of the hallway. She pushed on the handle of the door as hard as she could, but it didn't budge. Phantom was dragging his hooks again, this time a lot closer to her. Close enough for her to hear him more clearly. "If you think you're leaving here alive, you may be a worse detective than Martel." That hurt my feelings. The voice came from behind the phantom. Suddenly, the lights in the hallway all turned on. Corey could see Martel standing up straight. He still had his cane, but he wasn't relying on it as much as before. "It was a hoax," Corey said. But no one was listening to her. She applied more pressure to the wound on her shoulder and leaned against the locked door. "Corey, are you all right?" asked Martel. Before Corey could answer, the phantom put both hooks stretched out against the wall. "Leave, Martel. She's mine now." "Oh, I have no intent on fighting you for her. She's guard property, and I'm not a member of the guard anymore." Martel lifted his cane up, using the bottom of it to point to the doorway next to the phantom. "She's part of the guard, though. Might want to watch out for her." Who? The Phantom turned to the doorway and Lieutenant Konda came out of it and landed a punch on the Phantom. Phantom reacted with swings of the hooks, but Konda easily avoided them. She landed multiple punches on the Phantom, disarming him in the process before putting him down on the ground. I had no idea you could fight like that, said Corey. How did you two know where to find me? Did some digging at the trinket shop myself after you went missing, said Martel. The lieutenant owed me a few favors, but we worked something out. I can't teach you much in terms of detective work. If anything, you led me to the Phantom a lot quicker than I would have ever been able to get here. What do you mean? You used me as bait, said Corey. This is as much your win as it is mine. Martel laughed. Regardless, I think you need more physical training than mental. Lieutenant Konda is one of the best physical fighters in the entire guard. She agreed to help you out in exchange for the lead on the Phantom. Konda knelt down and pulled the mask off the Phantom. Well, it wasn't an ether mask like the Welton Company. That's Amar from the trinket shop, said Corey. I guess that makes a lot of sense. We should run some tests to see if the people that went missing all shopped at that store beforehand, said Konda. Is that something the guard can check now? Asked Martel. Where was information like that when I was there? Could always come back, answered Konda. They have wanted you back since the day you left. Don't sell your new resident detective short, Martel nodded to Corey. Here, let me help you out. Martel put Corey's good arm around his shoulders and helped her walk toward the entrance that he and Konda entered from. So the whole fragile old man thing was an act, said Corey. I like to gauge a person based on how they would treat an old man teaching them lessons instead of a snarky young detective. You're not young, said Konda with a sigh. Either scenario, you're still old. Quiet back there, Martel turned his head as Konda was handcuffing the Phantom. From the exit they were using to get out of the Phantom's dungeon came numerous guard officers on their way to help Konda secure the Phantom. Are they going to bring him to that floating prison? Asked Corey. Martel looked down at her. The floating chamber? Unlikely. The guard will make an example out of him and try to make this one a bit more public. Phantom was a menace and quite the scare for a quiet little place like this. Making his capture public and showing he was just a man will put a lot of minds at ease. That chamber is reserved for people worse than this. Corey found it hard to believe. Not necessarily worse, responded Martel. The chamber is usually reserved for things a bit out of the norm. Like Mavis, for example. That guy is definitely going to the chamber. A new race, otherworldly magical abilities. There's probably a cell with his name on it already. Corey and Martel made the rest of the way out in silence. Once outside, there were numerous cars lined up. Captain Fair was leaning on one of them with his arms folded. I sent you here for training, he said. Other things got in the way, Corey said with a shrug. I had to get involved with this. Captain Fair nodded, but turned his attention to Martel. I don't appreciate you using my new recruits as bait to lure out dangerous murderers. Maybe it was part of the training, Martel said with a smile. Captain Fair went to answer, but Martel cut him off. I don't appreciate you wasting my time on detectives that don't really need my training. Corey is exceptional. I had to use her to get to the Phantom. It was my best chance in years. I see. The way Captain Fair said it made it sound like he was proud of Corey, so she smiled. Don't expect me to send anyone else your way for training. Good. Martel leaned over and went back to relying on the cane. This old man just wants to live out the rest of his days alone. Martel leaned over in Corey's direction. I look forward to seeing what else you accomplish. Thank you, Corey bowed. Martel walked off in the direction of his house. Let's get you patched up, said Captain Fair. Looks like you lost a lot of blood. In the heat of the moment, Corey wasn't feeling the pain or the blood loss, but hearing Captain Fair say it, she began to feel lightheaded. One of the guard trucks was parked backwards to make it easier to treat anyone injured. The back of the truck was open, and Captain Fair walked Corey over. Inside the truck was Lucy and Guard Officer Delroy. Lucy was running statistics as always and had her head down. Step into my office, said Delroy with a smile. He put his hand out to help Corey into the truck. I figured it was you. I'm getting quite the reputation, said Corey with a smile of her own. You're a medic, too? Oh, hey, Corey. Lucy finally looked up. Officer Delroy does a little bit of everything. I'm not sure if there's anyone in the guard with as much training as him. I like to be prepared for anything. Now that Corey was sitting across from him, Delroy pulled a bag up from the ground onto the seat next to him, pulled out a small tube with a needle on it. Inside the tube was a green substance. Ever been injected with healing magic before? Nope. Corey undid some of the buttons on her white dress shirt and pulled the shoulder of her shirt down to reveal the wound from the hook. Anything I should know? It's a bit tingly, answered Lucy. Delroy laughed. Yeah, it's a weird feeling. Doesn't hurt, though. Not a big fan of needles. Let's just get it over with. Corey closed her eyes and turned her head. Give me your hand, said Delroy. Corey put out her hand without opening her eyes. Delroy grabbed her hand and readied the needle. Don't worry, it's pretty standard now, and even though it looks like a needle, it doesn't really hurt or feel like one. You gotta love the future, right? Delroy laughed. Will you just do it already? It's already done, said Delroy. I told you it wouldn't hurt. Corey opened one of her eyes to peek and saw Delroy putting the needle away. Suddenly, she felt the tingling sensation that Lucy told her about. It didn't hurt or feel like anything Corey was familiar with, and in mere seconds her wound was gone. This is incredible. Corey felt around the wound and poked where it used to be. Still lost a lot of blood, so I wouldn't do anything too crazy yet. Delroy zipped up the bag he had everything in. Try to get some rest. I think he means don't go chasing monsters and blue elves, or crazy dudes with hooks, added Lucy. Got it, Corey nodded. Lieutenant Conda entered the truck. She sat beside Corey. Lieutenant Conda, Delroy nodded. She's all patched up. Great job, Officer Delroy. Corey, how are you feeling? As good as new, said Corey. Are you really going to train me in physical combat? Are you ready for something like that? Conda smiled. Corey rubbed her shoulder. Delroy patched me up. I want to learn, and Martel says you're the best. I think he said I was one of the best, but I do have a lot of physical combat training. Let's set up some times and I'll come to Nova 1 to teach you. Don't they need you here? Asked Corey. Now that the Phantom is gone, I think the rest of my officers can handle this area if I'm gone for a few hours. Conda got back out of the truck. Corey thanked Delroy and said bye to Lucy, then got out of the truck with Conda. Not sure about the future of Novesta in general. It's scary times, but removing the Phantom makes it a bit less scary for the people here. I have you and Martel to thank for putting us in the right direction. If you and Martel didn't show up when you did, I would be dead, said Corey. Then we all owe each other a little. Conda put her hand out. Thanks for your help today, Detective. I look forward to helping you make Novesta a bit less scary for everyone. Corey smiled and shook Conda's hand.